Prager University, everyone's favorite channel. One of their more popular videos serves as a perfect example for many propaganda techniques and fallacies. The video focuses on the following points as Mr. Finpol put it.
If you attended college, this is what you were likely taught. America was founded through acts of genocide, accompanied by larceny on the grandest scale. Columbus and the Europeans who followed him sailed to the New World with the intention of exploiting whomever they found, and, if necessary, enslaving or exterminating them. Soon afterwards, they began importing black bodies from Africa. They then built the world's richest country out of a combination of slave labor, stolen land, and environmental destruction.
If you're attentive enough, the very first thing that comes to your mind should be, could this be an instance of the strawman fallacy? Mr. Finpol may paraphrase certain points to sound similar to what colleges actually teach, but are different enough in meaning so that they are easier to refute. The last point could be, since it said that this is what you are likely taught and not that this is what X college or teacher says, it can be compared to the original statement. But what a lot of people say, and the claim I think he's referencing, is that Columbus and other Europeans exploited indigenous people or committed violent acts against them. The difference is that the first claim, as he put it, can be discredited easily with Columbus discovered a new world accidentally as he was looking for a new trade route to India. This answer, with supporting evidence, disproves the claim as he put it. He did not use this opportunity, but it is a great example of the strawman fallacy and how it could be used.
Did I miss anything? As an historian, I can assure you this view is inaccurate in most particulars.
This is an example of appeal to authority. Whether a claim is true or not has nothing to do with who is making it. Just because he's an historian or a professor does not make his claims about history true. On the other hand, being an historian, he can have experience finding and reviewing relevant historic records or archaeological findings. Maybe he has connections in the professional community who can help him with his research. I'm sure with this useful skill set he will be able to provide ample evidence to support his claims.
But getting the story wrong is only part of the problem. The bigger problem is this. If you teach generation after generation that their country, their society, and their history are uniquely awful, they are likely to believe you. This is a sure route to societal failure.
Why would it lead to societal failure? I could just say hitchens razor and be done with it, but don't you think that people will try to fix their country and society if it is bad? You know, like they did with the 13th Amendment. Instead of pretending that slavery did not happen and does not exist, they just fix the problem. This baseless claim serves to set up an appeal to consequences fallacy, implying that the claim in question is false because if it was true, then society would collapse, and that's an obvious negative consequence. It is like saying that if cancer is real, then people will die, therefore cancer does not exist, because it's better if cancer does not exist.
This has consequences not only for America, but the entire world. Many in the US seem to have no clue just how much of a city on the hill the US is still perceived to be, and how important that American beacon is to millions of people living under autocratic regimes.
Why do you think the USA is perceived positively by people living in autocratic regimes? Is it because the watered-down version of a counterfeit beer produced in the USA? Or is it because the USA provides a preferred alternative like freedom of speech, religion, expression, association, and so on that lacks in autocratic regimes? You know, autocratic regimes that tend to pretend the problem does not exist instead of trying to fix it. And in some cases, even refusing to admit that problems existed, even after the problems disappeared and there is ample evidence for them.
If the image of the US is fundamentally delegitimized, if its entire raison d'etre, its reason for being, is tainted, then increasing numbers of people will wonder whether democracy itself is worth the trouble.
Why? I could repeat the previous segment, but you probably already recognize the same fallacy. Maybe it's just me or the language barrier, but what does either the USA's image or its reason for being have to do with democracy?
So let's correct the record before it's too late. The narrative of the stolen country or Native American genocide does not stand up to scrutiny by any honest historian. It is a dangerously myopic and one-sided interpretation of history. It puts 100% of the burden on Europeans, who are held responsible for nearly all historical evil. while so-called indigenous people are mere victims, saint-like, innocent martyrs whose civilizations were close to ideal. This is simplistic, anti-historic thinking that has gained currency only because most practicing historians and history teachers have either given into groupthink or else have been cowed into silence by fear of losing their jobs.
Is there no other reason for people to think that the genocide against indigenous people was committed? I was hoping that Mr. Finpo, using his expertise in history, would be able to provide evidence against the most common claims related to the genocide, like the buffalo hunting to deprive indigenous tribes from food, Trail of Tears, and the Indian Removal Act. But so far, almost halfway into the video, there were more fallacies committed than pieces of evidence presented by him, which was not difficult since the number of evidences he presented so far is
0.
There is hardly a single civilization on Earth which did not displace natives or which did not engage in nasty wars or ethnic cleansings at many points during its history.
What does this have to do with the claims? However, it's a good example of whataboutism. Whether or not other countries or peoples engage in genocide or wars provides no evidence against or for the claims of the genocide or stolen land in question, nor does it lessen the seriousness of these acts if they are proven to be true. I also don't understand that after claiming that the genocide in question did not happen, why does he try to minimize its seriousness by highlighting that almost every other group of people have done similar things?
No matter who discovered the New World, it's inevitable that a large proportion of its inhabitants would have died within the first few decades after first contact. The New World population was smaller and more homogeneous than the Old World population. Thus, its people had less immunity to disease than the people of the Old World, where communities from Africa, Asia, and Europe had been intermingling for millennia. So the claims of genocide by disease have almost nothing to do with European actions, apart from their simply reaching the New World. And of course, Europeans of the time had no way of predicting the continent-wide epidemic repercussions of their actions.
Correct. This is why there is no serious claim that simply contacting the indigenous people is an act of genocide by disease. What people supporting the claim of genocide often refer to is the gifting of blankets and linens deliberately infected with smallpox given to the indigenous people in hopes to infect them. Again, Mr. Finpo could have used his expertise in history to review and then present us the evidence or lack thereof and then assess it if it is enough to support the claim or not.
But who wants to talk about that? Let us also acknowledge that Native American society was just as warlike as any other in human history. The anthropologist's vision of Native Americans as peace pipe smoking environmentalists, which gained purchase in the 1970s, has long since given way to a more Hobbesian portrait of pre-Columbian reality. In North America, most natives were primitive farmers. This means that, with some exceptions, they had no permanent settlements. They farmed in an area for a few decades until they wore out the soil. Then, they moved on to greener pastures where the hunting was better and the land more fertile. If somebody was already on those greener pastures, that meant war. If you won, the land was yours, and the tribe you defeated was destroyed or assimilated. This pattern repeated itself endlessly. In most of North America, the idea that any one piece of land belonged to any one tribe for more than 50 or 100 years is highly doubtful. The idea that the Europeans stole land which had belonged in perpetuity to any one tribe is ludicrous.
Instead of providing the long-awaited evidence, he gives us another example of whataboutism. In addition to that, just to keep this video interesting, he also gives us an example of a new fallacy. It's just a single word. Have you noticed it? The original claim was that Europeans stole land that belonged to the tribes, and now he claimed that Europeans did not steal land that belonged in perpetuity to the tribes. This is called shifting the goalpost. The first claim could be true, while the second one being false.
This is the basic math of all human history. If you can defend your land, you can keep it. If you can't, you lose it. This was true 5,000 years ago, 500 years ago, and to a very real extent, it is still true today.
What does this have to do with the claims? Again, something that tries to make excuses for the alleged theft of land. Why is this necessary if, according to him, the claim of stolen land is untrue? Also, how is this supposed to justify conquest? And to be fair, he does not explicitly justify conquest, but this is the second time something like this came up, and later he mentions that we are debating the morality of conquest. So it's easy to interpret this segment as a justification for conquest or theft of land. A bad one at that. Just because it happened throughout history and is still happening today does not make it justified. People throughout history stole goats, silver coins and Amazon packages. That does not make it justified. Also throughout history, people did not use toilet paper, and some uncontacted Amazonian tribes without Amazon Prime still did not use it. This is not a good joke and not a good reason to not use toilet paper. Just because something existed for a long time or was done in a certain way, it does not mean that it was good. This is what is called appeal to tradition. Again, to be fair, he did not directly claim that conquest is justified, but it was a good opportunity to explain another fallacy, so you will be able to recognize it in the future.
In almost every case, conquest happened without remorse. Caesar didn't agonize over his conquest of Gaul. What is unique is that in conquering North America, some Europeans expressed moral qualms about what they were doing. This was true from the very beginning.
I became parrot, repeater of phrases. What does this have to do with the claims? This does not provide evidence for or against the claims, and is also not a justification nor a mitigating circumstance that I am more and more convinced that he is actually trying to implicitly present.
The priest Bartolomé de las Casas wrote an eloquent plea to the monarchs of Spain as early as the 1540s, chronicling in detail how wanton adventurers had exploited natives against the express will of the Spanish crown.
So, again, what does this have to do with the claims? Apart from, could it be the first piece of evidence? I mean in favor of the claims, not against them, as he would like to argue. On Project Gutenberg you can find Bartolomé's letters, link in the description, where in a section he describes the atrocities committed by Europeans, or Spanish to be more precise, against the natives on the continent. The reference to the land is just the continent, so I don't know that this is within the borders of the modern USA or is in Central America. Also, I don't see any reference to the source of the accounts, if Bartolomé was an eyewitness or if these are stories told over a chain of multiple people. Also, I don't know if there are embellishments to the story. Just in general, be aware that this alone is not sufficient evidence in favor of the claims. But this is the only piece of evidence in the video, so... or it isn't. Mr. Finpole does not reference the atrocities that Bartolomé describes in his letter. He only mentions that Bartolomé pleaded to the Spanish king in order to stop the atrocities, some of which were setting fire to villages, torturing inhabitants, and stealing their gold. I mean, they can't really own anything since they are dead, so is it really stealing? Torturing a person who gifted them gold, probably unwillingly according to the priest, in order to get more gold, then torturing him even more. To be precise, they burned him at the stake, till by degrees of heat the marrow gushed out of the soles of his feet, and so he died. Conquering the land of the natives, perpetual bondage. I imagine with the Spaniards adhering to good Christian values, this did not refer to a BDSM session, but to slavery. Also, taking people into slavery was clearly mentioned later. Killing some natives, then kidnapping their women, whom they have also killed when encountering more natives. So, to review the claims, acts of genocide, check. Larceny on the grandest scale, check. Exploiting, enslaving, exterminating, yeah, also check. To be precise, Mr. Finpole said that the claim is
Columbus and the Europeans who followed him sailed to the New World with the intention of exploiting whomever they found, and, if necessary, enslaving or exterminating them.
And not that these actions actually took place, so technically, even if these accounts are true, this claim is still not proven. Back to the video.
The priest's concerns were picked up by countless others over the centuries and continue to this day. Yes, it was Western Europeans who made an issue of human rights.
I am just pulling this one out of my ass and have no evidence or facts to back up my claim, but I would bet a happy meal menu on that at least one Native American had an issue with what the Europeans were doing.
Which is why we debate the morality of conquest in the first place.
Are we? Are there people arguing in favor of conquest being moral? And why are we doing it in this video? It's almost like nobody told him what the topic of this video is. which is strange because he clearly reads off of a script, so someone had time to write a script that I imagine someone else proofread. In addition to the crew recording it, hearing it, the editor seeing the whole video. I guess at this production value someone else must have reviewed the video before uploading it to YouTube and also to their own website, and nobody along this chain said, hey guys, maybe we shouldn't do this. The script is, well, to say within the guidelines, is incoherent. Which is strange because everything else is quite good. The animations and transitions look good, the sound is clear and nice to listen to, the script is even written in their description, to the length that YouTube allows, that is, but the full script is available on their website that again looks nice and professional. So why is the script the only single thing that is? This is the end of the video, and he presented evidence or anything that remotely resembles a valid argument against exactly zero of the claims he tried to discredit. Most often he just went on irrelevant tangents instead of talking about the topic of this video.
But who wants to talk about that? I'm Jeff Finn Paul, professor of economic and social history at Leiden University for Prager University.
I hope you learned something today and will be able to recognize these fallacies in the future, because that was the goal of my video. My goal was not to argue in favor of the claims he tried to discredit, but to show that his arguments against the claims are lacking sufficient evidence or contain logical fallacies. And I hope you will be able to recognize these tactics and fallacies in the future. If you are new to my channel, and you probably are since this is my first video, I will be making content highlighting fallacious arguments, propaganda techniques, and mis- or disinformation, since even though many people are familiar with these in theory, most often they cannot recognize them in real life. My content will not cover which political ideology or party you should support. This is a decision you will have to make for yourself. Ideally, for good reason, based on evidence, and not based on fallacious and baseless claims. I also want to emphasize that this video was not against Mr. Finn Paul or the PragerU channel, nor against their political beliefs. This was a video highlighting bad arguments. Someone can come to the correct conclusion even through wrong reasons. However, this is exceedingly rare. More often, people come to wrong conclusions through wrong reasoning. If you believe in something, you should find good reason for your beliefs to be certain that they are actually correct, and to be able to persuade others that you are actually correct. Thank you for watching my video, and see you next time.